Hey, um, welcome everyone to the Critical Catholic. Um, I apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties. Mike Lewis is rebooting as we speak. He
Still
should be
has-
joining us. He
Yeah.
should be joining us shortly. And Nathan, I'm getting just a tiny bit of echo from your side, maybe. So I'll just ask you to maybe mute when you're not speaking, and then we can that might eliminate that. Yeah, no worries. So welcome. I'm here with Nathan Tarowski. I'm D.W. Lafferty, David Lafferty, and again, Mike Lewis will be joining us soon. And we're going to talk tonight about a new scandal, I guess, or mystery that's emerged in the world of Viganò, Archbishop Viganò, the Viganò land. This is something that I've been following very closely, and I think Nathan, Mike, we've all been following the whole saga of Viganò. I have to say that 2018, when Viganò had his notorious intervention, this was a moment that really changed things for me, where I felt that there was a coordinated attack, it seemed to be happening on Pope Francis, and we needed to get to the bottom of it. And it's been a long saga since then, with a lot of interesting twists and turns. But we're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to dig into this a little bit and see what the implications are for the traditionalist movement as a whole, or I should say the radical traditionalist movement. There are many traditionalists who are, not interested in Viganò, don't really care what he does or says, but there are many who still are and have a lot invested in the whole Viganò persona. So maybe we can. We're just waiting for Mike, so maybe we can give a little background before we start, because Mike's gonna bring us a little prayer. So we're gonna skip the prayer for now, and we're just gonna get right into some of the details of the new Viganò saga. So let me just bring up my information here. So the case of Viganò 1 versus Viganò 2 is something that emerged after Professor Roberto D'Amate published an article called "The Viganò Case: The Archbishop and His Double" in a publication called, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Corrispondenza Romana. And he put forward the idea that perhaps there has been a shift in Viganò's rhetoric over time, that there has been a change in his language, and to the extent that one has to ask, is Archbishop Viganò actually writing his own interventions, his own correspondence, his own interviews right now? And he followed this up with another article on, let me see, 23rd of the month, called Viganò Case. Oh, no, sorry. One sec here. Viganò Case, who is the real author of the writings of Archbishop Viganò? And in this, he proposed that the real author of a number of Archbishop Viganò's interventions, correspondences, interviews is a blogger that goes under the name of Cesare Baronio. And this Cesare Baronio figure has a blog, which I have taken a close look at, called Opportune Importune. And I have to say, I believe that there's something to it. Nathan, have you had a chance to dig into this whole theory of Viganò 1 versus Viganò 2 yet?
I skimmed the Cesare Baronio blog.
Yeah.
I definitely see the similarities to some of the more Some of the more over the top, some of the more vituperative, Viganò two writings, the one that demonstrate, intimate familiarity with the language use on the political far right, especially the American political far right, etc. I definitely think there's an escalation in that over the course of Archbishop Viganò's V drops over the past 3 years.
Hey guys,
I think
sorry, I'm just saying hi. Can you guys see and hear me? I'm in the room. I don't know if you've been looking at the
we can see and hear you now, Mike.
So I'm on the cell phone and I'm rebooting the computer. I don't know what I've missed. Did we do the prayer?
No, we haven't done the prayer, but let me just give me 1 second and I can maybe set that up, okay?
Okay, yeah, I'm
so everyone excuse us tonight because we're having just some technical difficulties. It may be, Viganò trying to intervene here. But, yeah, but which one?
Did we get any viewer feedback on the fantastic new intro sequence that I designed?
Nothing so far. Nothing so far. But if anyone would like to comment on the new intro sequence, we'd be happy to hear about it. So, well, Mike, maybe we can. I can try to play the video here from. We have a video from Gareth Thomas. And Mike, if you can you give us a little bit of detail about Gareth, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So basically, Gareth has been writing for us for I want to say 4 or 5 months. I think he started writing during Lent, and he has a very interesting background. He is a convert to the Catholic faith. Spent part of his upbringing in Spain, but he's originally from England. I believe he said he's only been to the United States once. So I think he went to New York when he was a Franciscan, but he also spent time in a Carthusian monastery. Currently, he is living the life of a hermit in the mountains of Spain, and his where he cares for 4 donkeys. They're his family over there. So he has a very eclectic background, and he's been a great gift to where Peter is, just bringing a unique perspective and a lot of life experience. He and Dr. John Morrissey actually came over. They're both English. Dr. John has written 2 articles for us so far. The one was about 6 different mass or liturgy experiences that he's had, and the other one was the beginning of his conversion story. And the 2 of them kind of had been part of a traditionalist Catholic blog for a group blog for a long time, but that group became more QAnon, more Viganò, more conspiratorial as time wore on, and they decided to basically what happened was they woke up. So this is in a way writing for where Peter is penance for Gareth, but no, he's a great writer, and he's been a great asset to have. So anyway, he wrote this great parody of the 2 Viganò's story, and I don't know what you've already talked about.
We've just did a very broad outline so far.
So he decided so he wrote a piece that got a really good reaction. I think it was our first foray into satire on where Peter is, like pure parody, pure satire, where he wrote it in the form of he wrote about the saga in the form, well, actually, he wrote about his research into the saga in the form of a parody of an Umberto Eco novel. But anyway, he also contributed the prayer, and that's the first clip that we are going to show.
Sure, and I'll put that up. So instead of our usual prayer, we have a video prayer from Gareth Thomas coming in all the way from Spain, and I think it's like 2 a.m. there right now. So he could not be here live, but I really appreciate that he was able to send this. So here, we'll play the prayer for you now.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the Costa Blanca this evening. This is your time it's much later, but here we're looking at 6 p.m. and the donkeys are having their supper. They've just started their supper. So I know that you always start with a prayer. So we're going to, because the donkeys are eating, we're going to start with the grace. The eyes of all look to you in hope, O Lord, and you give them their food in due season. You open wide your hand and fill all things living with your bounteous gift. The Lord is just in all his ways and faithful in all his dealings. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Gareth, for sending that in. That's beautiful. So, what we were going to talk a little bit about Gareth's piece, and now actually, Gareth has another video here that he wanted to share about the development of his piece, and then we can maybe talk to Nathan a little bit about what he thought of the piece, because I think Nathan, you and I think both of us really connected with this.
Yes, absolutely.
Gareth's writing.
I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and it really kind of highlighted the absurdity of, I think, the situation right now with Viganò. But we'll get into some of the more serious matters maybe later. But for right now, we can kind of look at this piece and see how it developed and what it means. So I'll just play this next video from Gareth, where he talks a little bit about the development of the piece. Oh, having video issues there. Let me just pop. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how are you? So I switched browsers. You are the admin, though. I don't have admin rights. So wait, the video did not play?
For some reason, it wouldn't play the second video.
Let me. I can get. Keep talking. Sorry, this is like the worst.
No worries.
It's not the worst.
We're a little disorganized tonight, but it fits with the subject matter, because the subject matter is all over the place right now. So
I think it's the third Viganò.
What I guess I can talk a little bit more about this whole controversy. So Roberto D'Amate, the reason that he claimed that this blogger Cesare Baronio was perhaps writing for Viganò, or at least contributing maybe something to Viganò's statements, is because he went through and he analyzed the rhetoric and just noticed a lot of correspondences. And Nathan, you said you went through and had a look at this blog, and I went through as well, and I found that it was very, very striking, some of the similarities. I'm just going to bring up a couple of examples here very quickly. So hold on one sec. So
I found the video. If you another way to play it.
Okay, well, maybe I'll finish. Just I was just talking a little bit about the Cesare Baronio blog, and maybe we can maybe we'll save that until after. Actually, let's go and let's hear from Gareth and maybe a little bit about his piece first.
Okay, David, you're going to have to click on that box on the bottom of the screen there.
Sure. Okay. Oh, it's not. Having some issues there.
Are you not hearing the audio, or what?
No, not, unable to hear the audio. Let me try the.
Oh, I could hear it just fine.
Oh, okay. Let me try the other one again here. No, okay. So that's not.
I wish I had my admin access. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Here, I wonder if I can give it to you. Or.
Well, this is what you get. Okay, so I'm going to upload the entire video onto YouTube after this is over.
Yes. Okay.
You'll get to see Gareth's unfiltered thoughts. Sorry, Gareth. Jeannie Gaffigan, if you're watching, Gareth's spiritual director wants to get together with your agent to put together a Catholic British comedy special. So just so you know, that's in the video. But anyway.
Okay, well, maybe Nathan, would you mind telling us a little bit about Gareth's piece? Because I think you read it fairly closely and kind of delved into it, and maybe a little bit of the background of the style that he used in this piece to talk about this new Viganò controversy.
So Gareth's piece was called, I think the title we ended up going with was Viganò's Pendulum. And it's in the style of an Umberto Eco novel. Umberto Eco having been an Italian writer who he was an academic, a medievalist and a linguist and what's called a semiotician. But among many people, he's better known for novels focusing on conspiracy theories, not in like a Da Vinci Code, ooh, you don't know the real truth sense, but in the sense of focusing on conspiracy theorists and the type of personality that develops these theories, these understandings of the world, who disseminates them, who buys into them, and so on. The most famous Umberto Eco novel that deals with this is Foucault's Pendulum, which was written in the 1980s. It's available in Italian and in English and probably in a bunch of other languages as well. And it's the story of, Gareth's piece talks about this. It's the story of a group of bored book publishers who work for a vanity press in Milan, who decide to use the press's resources to develop bogus conspiracy theories, apparently through random association. And Gareth's piece is kind of in this style, dealing with similar concerns, like even the concept of a shadowy far-right disgraced Italian archbishop is almost like an Umberto Eco stock character. I'm not really sure what more to say about the piece itself, but that's the that's what's being spoofed. That's what's being
I mean, and Umberto Eco has always had this fascination with conspiracy theories. I know I haven't actually read any of his work. I know that he had a novel out called The Prague Cemetery. I think it was something like that.
Yes, The Prague Cemetery. It's the only one of his novels that it's an amazing work. It's the only one of his novels I refuse to reread, though, just because of how repellent deliberately repellent the main character is.
Yeah, and it deals with anti-Semitism, I think, right?
The writing of Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Yes, yes. Yeah, that's fascinating. So obviously, yeah, this kind of scenario is perfect for satire, and it's almost I mean, I guess it's a bit of a comedy, right? If you're not taking it too seriously. But it's what's crazy about this, and what's crazy about I think the time that we're living in, is that something so silly as this, having Viganò be this person putting out these statements, railing against Pope Francis, railing against the church, talking about Freemasons, that it's actually being taken somewhat seriously by a large number of people, and it's actually had a real influence in Catholic life at the sort of parish level, even, right? Like this is not just something that's confined to the world of radical traditionalists. Like, this stuff used to be back when the only way that you could share these kind of statements or this kind of information was through newsletters and pamphlets and that sort of thing, right? now it's pumped out there. I mean, when you go back to 2018, Viganò was picked up by some of the big Catholic news outlets. Even recently, there are still people like Raymond Arroyo on EWTN on the world over, giving interview time to Archbishop Viganò.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, though, about that Raymond Arroyo interview, which I wrote an article about, which most of you are aware of, is that Arroyo and EWTN, it was a pre-scripted interview. The questions and the answers were all pre-scripted, and EWTN censored out some of the pre-recorded answers that that Viganò gave, like things like, I guess one of the lines was, Pope Francis is to the deep church as Biden is to the deep state, and then there were also references.
Pope Francis, he said Bergoglio, but yeah.
Bergoglio, I'm sure, and also references to the Pope being the Antichrist, or like the more wacky stuff got deleted from EWTN's broadcast, and if basically when you mess with Viganò, you're playing with fire. I think when we talk about the obviously Viganò released the full transcript, and then his co-author Robert Moynihan even released the whole story of what happened. Oh, this was added, this was cut, this was not in the broadcast interview, but it was in the prepared interview, and it's one of those things. And I think what happened here to some degree is De Mattei writes this analysis. He thinks that that Viganò has a new ghostwriter that's been saying these more wacky, off the wall things. Well, Viganò then goes after him, goes after his reputation, goes after his motives. He's very vindictive. If you may also recall the instance where Cardinal Seurat took his name off. It was one of Viganò's more early rants. It was about how the very first deep state, deep church COVID conspiracy letter that he wrote.
It was the COVID the statement on COVID that Cardinal Seurat got involved in, and then
Cardinal Seurat left a message and said, take me off this list, or I don't want to sign it anymore. But Viganò didn't get the message. Seurat's name got out, and then Seurat denied having signed it, and then Viganò comes back in the remnant, hitting hard, saying, I have a recording of our telephone conversation, and it's 6 minutes and 25 seconds long, and you said this and you said that, and you said you agreed with me on this, and how dare you injure my reputation like this? Like, I mean, really just hammering at him. I don't know if you have the latest his response to De Mattei, but it's ruthless.
I don't have it. Yeah, I don't have it on me, but it was definitely ruthless. I mean, he attacks very harshly whenever he's criticized. Obviously,
it's linked in Gareth's story. Did you put that up already in the?
No, I haven't put it up yet, but maybe we can get it in there. One of the interesting things is, what I'm kind of wondering why Roberto De Mattei is doing this now, and I've been thinking about that a little bit. And one of the things that strikes me is that I've read a little bit of De Mattei's stuff, and he strikes me as someone who falls into the tradition family property mindset. I don't believe he's a member of TFP. I don't know if he is or not, but I know that he wrote a biography, a very well-known biography of the TFP founder, and he seems to have that same sort of extremely serious style. There's a sort of aura that I think he tries to project in his writings, and it's one of, erudition and detail and seriousness and that sort of thing. So when you have someone like Archbishop Viganò, or this Archbishop Viganò II that he talks about, right, kind of going off the rails, getting into area that just is starting to seem silly, even to some of the like more devoted radical traditionalists, you run the risk of by attaching yourself to him, you run the risk of making yourself look silly too. And someone like DeMatte, if there's anything about him that I know, it's that he likes to be taken seriously and likes to be considered a serious theologian or a figure in the Catholic world. So I think this is the moment where he's like, I got to cut the got to cut the line somehow.
And this is the interesting thing, because I think, we were having this discussion the other day, I think on Twitter, where talking about the atomic bombs and this traditionalist movement. Obviously, the dubia, I think it was made public at the end of October in 2016, where Cardinal Burke and 3 other cardinals submit these traps, or these questions, these dubia about Amoris Laetitia, chapter 8, Pope Francis's exhortation on the family. Essentially, the questions are traps, or they're setups to make him, if he answers yes, he's admitting to heresy. If he answers no, then he has to retract what he said. But they're these loaded questions. That the fact that he didn't answer them, or not even the fact that he didn't answer them, that the splash that made was huge. I think that was an internal hit. It was a theological question, and I think outside of a certain subset of Catholics, nobody really cared what the dubia was, or it was. I mean, I think most Catholics today, not the ones necessarily that read Where Peter Is or follow these traditionalist blogs, I think if they were aware of it, it's like, oh, that was what those like cranky old cardinals did back in 2016. Now, Viganò, though, in August 2018, he hit the church where it was vulnerable and at the worst possible time. And I think, I honestly, to this day, I still think that the Viganò testimony, the motivation behind that, well, it was within the text of the letter. It was a demand for Francis to resign, and I think they felt that they had the momentum if they were able to. McCarrick. Here's the funny thing: Viganò had no impact on McCarrick's case whatsoever. Maybe because of him, the McCarrick report came out, but McCarrick had already been stripped of, he was suspended. He had been stripped of his red hat, or he voluntarily resigned it, but it was accepted. He was on the path to laicization. And Viganò kind of swoops in during the canonical trial and has all of this supposedly new information about McCarrick, but he also named like 27 other bishops, including Americans, accusing them being part of being this part of this homosexual network, the Lavender Mafia or whatever. Provides no evidence. Even I knew, the funny thing is 2 or 3 days later, his narrative deconstructed. But a lot of conservative Catholic outlets and a lot of Catholics, didn't read the 3 or 4 stories that blew apart his timeline, saying that McCarrick was under house arrest from 2007 until 2013 or whatever the years were. It was ridiculous. I live in Washington,
Right.
D.C. Yeah, go ahead.
And in this period, of course, in reality, there's evidence, like audio-visual evidence of McCarrick in Rome.
Oh, I saw him. I saw him in Rome. He was. It was my brother
Sorry,
in 2011. So this is the period when he's supposedly suspended. Benedict is still Pope, and it was the end of 2011. So Viganò was already the nuncio in Washington, D.C. So these three pieces are all in place. You'd think if those were all in place, then McCarrick would have been observing.
Yeah.
What's that?
Then McCarrick wouldn't be going anywhere. I mean,
Oh, yeah. But here he is. He is concelebrating at the altar of the chair in St. Peter's, standing right next to Cardinal Levada, who is the prefect of the Congregation of Divine Worship. For this,
Levada was CDF.
CDF, Doctrine of the Faith, sorry. Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. And so this was the diaconate ordination for North American College. So it was sort of a family week, right? It was this whole week of preparations and receptions and touring Rome and masses. Well, there was a closing mass Saturday evening, and who was at North American College's chapel. 50, 60 priests there, probably 5 bishops. Who was the main celebrant of this mass? It was Cardinal McCarrick. So here he is, the main celebrant of this, of this big mass with all of these important American bishops and archbishops and seminary rectors and seminarians, and he's treated like a guest of honor. There was no indication that he was under any kind of sanctions.
Didn't he concelebrate a mass with Viganò at least once? Or
I mean, I'm sure he did, because he was while Viganò was there, because he was Viganò showed up at this stuff, and so did McCarrick. And I mean, there was that banquet at the Pontifical Mission Societies in 2012, which is where that Viganò is actually giving an award to McCarrick. Which also falls within this window, and it's all covered in the McCarrick report. But basically, this whole story, as more and more has come out, we've realized that it was bunk. But because it is so integral to the anti-Francis narrative, that this idea that he sent McCarrick to China to work out a deal with the Chinese communists, that Viganò is hiding for his life because he's this whistleblower. Like, they need Viganò to help carry their narrative, but Viganò just keeps getting crazier and crazier and crazier. So they need to come up with a way to draw that line. Like, how can I the Viganò from 2018 and 2019, the brave one who was in hiding, who's writing these profound, clear-headed. I never found them profound or clear-headed. I think beyond the very first testimony, which didn't hold up, they were pretty much all, bigoted screeds as far as I could tell. It's like, we need to have a legitimate Viganò for our narrative to still work. We can't look at this crazy, or this guy who's completely lost his marbles.
No, I want to interject though a little bit about my perspective on the original Viganò intervention, because I, at the time in 2018, I didn't actually I hadn't heard of Archbishop Viganò until this all broke, and I wasn't very familiar even with Cardinal McCarrick. And I know he's a very prominent, or he was a very prominent figure in the U.S., but I wasn't like too familiar with him. But when all of this happened, what struck me was, you see, I'd been following a lot of the stuff that had been going on in sort of conspiracy land in surrounding Trump, and so like around the sort of MAGA conspiracy world, and at that time, like, so back in say 2015, 2016, you get the development of this new conspiratorial thinking, and a lot of that started with the Epstein case, like the whole saga of, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the Epstein saga, but and that blew up, and he was connected to, when all this broke, he was connected to Bill Clinton, he was connected to all these people who were kind of elites, global elites, right? Globalists, right? And that was the narrative that started. And then you get into the whole Pizzagate narrative, right? Where people, based on John Podesta's emails, people started believing that there was a cabal out there of pedophiles who were, all globalist elites who were, preying on children. And then you get the QAnon phenomenon starting to form late 2017, I think it was, and then into 2018. And then all of a sudden, Viganò comes out with this statement. And what struck me was it seemed like an attempt to make McCarrick sort of the new, like the Epstein of the Catholic Church, right? Where anyone who was even remotely connected to him could be considered sort of guilty by implication, because he put it, like, according to Viganò's original testimony, the idea really was, if you read through it, he was really suggesting that there is a homosexual network in the church. They cover for each other. They are abusers. So they are serial abusers of either seminarians or kids or whatever, right? And this network goes all the way up to the top. They all promote each other. They all, cover for each other. And the implication was that Pope Francis was part of this, right? He was also covering for McCarrick. So McCarrick became, McCarrick he did terrible things, and I don't want to ever, minimize that, but he became a figure a bit like Epstein, he was a mythological figure, this sort of centerpiece of this new conspiracy that would, that would implicate so many people within the church, and the similarities between that and what I was seeing, a year or two before in the world of MAGA conspiracy land was striking to me. And that's what really made me think, I'm not convinced that what Viganò is saying here in his letter is actually, based in truth. I thought this seems like a very perfectly timed, especially because you had the Pennsylvania report that had come out. Everyone was reeling about revelations of child sex abuse in the Catholic Church. He comes out pinning all of this on McCarrick, and that whole thing had just broken. And the idea that it goes right up to the top, right? Because that's always this type of conspiracy theory. It's always the idea that it's right up to the top. They're all in on this.
Well, and he was in Ireland too. I mean,
yes,
it was in the middle of his Irish trip.
It was so perfectly timed. And, it wasn't a surprise to me later on when Viganò started actually bringing in material from that whole MAGA conspiracy world. Like he started talking about John Podesta's emails and Marina Abramovich and all these people, and how they, how this relates to the deep state and the deep church. And I mean, he was fusing these narratives. And I think maybe now is, a time when some people are trying to cut themselves off from the sort of QAnon type conspiracy narrative. It's not useful anymore. It's been after January 6th, it was completely, derailed and, became just obviously a huge national problem to everyone. And maybe people are doing the same now with Viganò. It's like, it's time to end this. It's time to, we gotta move on. I mean, I think it's, I don't know if that's Demate's, those are his feelings, but I think some people are maybe thinking it's time to get off this Viganò ship because it's going to sink.
Well, my take is that I think everybody, conspiracy theorists and people of a certain ideology have a threshold, right? It's like, I'm willing to go with you this far, but not this far. And so, I remember Father Wynandy, George Weigel, and Sandro Magister, the Italian journalist, totally opposed to Pope Francis, but they're all JP2 Benedict guys, right? They like the hermeneutic of continuity. They love their particular interpretation of Vatican II. They just don't like Pope Francis. So it's like, for them, they're not 1958 traditionalists who like cut it off at John the 23rd, or 1962 traditionalists who cut it off at Vatican II. They're
2013 traditionalists.
2013. That's when the magisterium died for them, right? It's the living magisterium died in March 2013, February 28th, 2013. And so for them, when Viganò started going after Vatican II and saying it doesn't matter, it's not the it's not about the interpretation, the whole thing is rotten, yada yada yada. That's when the Wynandis and the Weigels and the Magisters were like, no, this is getting to be too much. Like this is where we draw the line. We love our JP2. We're not going to go against Benedict, who's the greatest ever, because we've just spent the last 6 or 7 years saying how Benedict was great and Francis is awful. And so that's where they drew their line. Now, De Mattei is an opponent of Vatican II. He's a pure traditionalist. So people like De Mattei, people like Steve Skojec, they are anti-Vatican II traditionalists, but they don't go in for the one world order, deep state, QAnon type stuff. So that's where they draw the line. And the problem is that, and the thing is, go ahead.
Skojec has actually just in the past few months been reassessing a lot of his own, unfortunately not many of his own views or his own bigotries, but a lot of his commitments, a lot of his assumptions based on just the extent to which the QAnon deep state like political conspiracism has metastasized through the traditionalist Catholic world.
Well, yeah, he never bought into the cultish aspect of. I mean, I think he was kind of an infiltration guy, kind of like Freemasons and evil people are running the Vatican, but he wasn't like, well, actually, he was promoting the false prophet. He was like one of the first people to call Francis the false prophet. But
that's still a whole different beast than like, QAnon, Trump and the Army of Light versus Francis and the Army of Darkness, like, religion is politics, politics is religion thing. That's become the norm in Skojec's former circles over the last like 12 or 18 months or so.
Well, and his heroes were Athanasius Schneider and Cardinal Burke and a lot of these figures, right? And they're now Make-It Hickson, LifeSite news writer. She used to be a regular contributor to 1 Peter 5. I mean, a lot of the people that he admired have gone down the rabbit hole with Viganò. I mean, that's the funny thing, and this is where Gareth's piece actually makes a very good point. Like, this is beyond what normal people are concerned about. Like the fact that Viganò has a ghostwriter, like, big deal. I assumed he had one. Okay, they figured out who it is. Like, he's been nuts the whole time. Like, that's my opinion. But for De Mattei, because a certain amount of Viganò is okay, but the recent Viganò is not okay, and he's making this stand like this is unreasonable. A lot of Viganò's backers, like LifeSite news type people, are pushing back against De Mattei. They've demonized De Mattei because they are still on the Viganò train, and who knows where they're willing to follow him. I mean, when he declares Francis to be an anti-pope, or when he declares himself to be pope, or when, who knows, when he builds a compound in the middle of wherever he is hiding.
And for them, one of the big problems is that, Viganò staked his reputation on being a truth teller, right? Like on being this brave whistleblower, this person who is not going to hide any longer and is going to speak the truth, exactly as he sees it. And now if it comes out that he wasn't, actually writing a lot of the stuff under his name, even though now he's, denied it completely. Well, what does that say about his character, right? And I really think, I've been looking into this Cesare Baronio blog, which is apparently the blog written by the person, or allegedly the person who became Viganò's ghostwriter, and there are incredible similarities in language. I wanted to point out one that struck me because I've written in Where Peter Is on Viganò's use of terms like invisible enemy, deep state, and deep church, which are kind of connect to the world of QAnon and MAGA. And on this same blog, this Cesare Baronio blog from the 24th of March, he had a post in English talking about, he says, in the church, or sorry, he says, in the world of politics, the world of politics has a few people who have begun to move against the invisible enemy, which has spread throughout the world. In the church, there is still no one willing to speak out against the dictatorship, which brings together deep state and deep church. And these are all italicized: invisible enemy, deep state, and deep church. June 6th and 7th, just shortly after that, you get Viganò's very famous letter to Trump, in which he brings up the terms deep state, deep church, and fighting the invisible enemy, all italicized in the exact same way. It seems like Demete has a very strong case here. I think the more I'm going to investigate this blog a little more, the stuff that I have from it, but it certainly seems like someone has been writing for him. Now, what I want to know is, like, what's Viganò actually doing? Like, is he, if this is true, if Demete has figured this out, then what has Viganò been doing? Is he sort of in the background, allowing this to happen? Is he reading this stuff before it goes out, or is it just being sent out under his name, or what's going on? It's fascinating.
Well, we do know. So there, I guess, during one of the Stop the Steal rallies, there was actual video of him reading one of these speeches. We've heard his audio, like we heard it pre-written, obviously, during the time of. I guess he was on Steve Bannon's show. He was on Raymond Arroyo's show. He does speeches from time to time. I think he did an address at the Patrick Coffin, the Stop the Fear or whatever the COVID denialist rally that he had. I think he's complicit. I mean, my take is that his English is not. He's conversant. Obviously, he's a Vatican diplomat. He was in the U.S., but I don't think that he has the level of fluency. So he has to rely on these ghostwriters. But I can't help but think that there's a great deal. I mean, it's impossible to psychoanalyze because he's made himself into a character or a caricature. I would assume that he's delusional. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I think he believes a lot of this. I don't think he's deliberately lying. I think he's a legend in his own mind. I mean, I don't know. Nathan, you're better read than I am about everything. Do you have any theories about what Viganò is doing in the? My theory is he's in a castle in Munich.
With those von Turnham's Taxis people.
Yeah, and he made that public appearance in Munich. So I'm thinking that she's got him stowed away somewhere, but that's just a theory.
I think he's probably happy to be there wherever he is, and I mean he's a more being taken for a ride by Cesare Baronio or not, he's far more relevant and known and respected by some people in retirement than he ever was when he was a Vatican diplomat. I think he's. I'm sure he agrees with most of this stuff. I'm sure he. I don't know. I don't pretend to know what goes on in his head, but my guess is he agrees with what's being written in his name. He's happy to be trotted out by these Bavarian nobles or whoever, and do the little, read the little scripted spiels. I don't think he's writing it himself. I mean, De Mattei has pretty conclusively, I think, demonstrated that he's not. But
yeah, and further,
he's still. Why is it? He's still running the Viganò enterprise. He's still, the brand identity of.
Oh yeah, and I think he has respect among a certain circle. Like I think they like that he's Viganò and he's who he is. Now, because we weren't able to, and I'm going to try to run it now that I have admin access back, but I'm going to go back to Gareth's piece. I'm going to talk about it a little bit because we didn't get a chance to show him talking about it, and I will upload that to YouTube, Gareth. So I'm very sorry if about not running it. But so basically he framed, and this is where I was also offline, so I don't, if you already covered this territory, but so he frames the story of Gareth, the character Gareth, and Mike Lewis asks him in the offices of where Peter is, handing Gareth an English, a British to American dictionary, so that it's kind of an in-joke between us, because when I edit his work, I'm like, so I just changed this one sentence and I changed the I changed the Britishisms to Americanisms. So he litters throughout, in the post room, and then in parentheses he has mail room, and talks about boots and trunks, and he also tells a story. He puts in a lot of little details like Umberto Eco, which I guess the most visually striking one is he goes to the window to look out and he sees a dead bat on the windowsill.
The second of two dead bats, Mike having had David.
Yes, that was my addition to the script. Originally, it said Gareth just had me saying that I had the janitor throw it out, and I changed the line to I had Lafferty take care of it. I think there were 3 on the windowsill total. There was one earlier, but so he tells this story as if, okay, I'm going to dig into this, I'm going to find this information, and then so he talks about how that Baronio guy took his blog down. So he says, the immediate disappearance of Baronio's blog from the internet immediately after De Mattei's report confirmed it was indeed becoming a bigger story. Maybe De Mattei and Barbieri were onto something, and this was a way to flesh out the villains? As a holder of a good graduate degree in linguistics, I explored the cached pages of the Baronio blog, and there was clear evidence that he had the identical speech and vocabulary rhythms and contemptuous tone that went with Viganò 2. It doesn't take an expert. Everyone had commented Viganò 2 was different from the tone of Viganò 1, and many earlier supporters had already distanced themselves from him. All right, so a new ghostwriter came in from 2020, and so what? That's the end of that paragraph. It's like, well, what do we? Okay, all right. He got somebody else to write his paragraphs for him. I mean, I guess this is the kind of thing, and this is something that I kind of want to go talk about a little bit more. Since we got a late start, we can kind of keep going. The traditionalist movement, the anti-Francis movement, has disintegrated. I think in 2015, 2016, the time following the dubia, when Cardinal Burke was promising this formal act of correction against Pope Francis, I think there was a real feeling within the traditionalist movement that they were going to be able to get rid of Pope Francis somehow, force him to resign, convince enough bishops and cardinals that he was a heretic and have some kind of vote over it and get him kicked out.
Hope he died relatively soon when the College of Cardinals was still mostly JP and Benedict people.
And I think Viganò's blow was the hardest blow because it implicated the Pope in a sexual abuse cover-up scandal. And I think that after the Viganò story kind of fell apart, like there was a big blow up. It was a scandal. They had that sexual abuse summit, I think, in early 2019, I want to say, and they came out with Vos Estis, the document about handling sexual abuse, like punishing bishops for sexual abuse and for mishandling sexual abuse. I know that there were a lot of bishops that went there, especially like from Africa and from South America, who didn't seem to be taking the issue as seriously as Pope Francis wanted them to take it. Like, it's a global issue, and certain countries were saying it's not an issue in our country. I think Pope Francis handled it. I mean, everyone makes mistakes. Obviously, after he mishandled Chile, and that was sort of that was in early 2018. Because I remember it was happening just as we started Where Peter Is. So 2018 was just a bad year altogether. But I think people saw real change, a real motivation to change. Pope Francis weathered that storm as Viganò's narrative, at least in the eyes of the mainstream, crumbled. It was clear that if Pope Francis didn't know any more than I mean, basically his biggest crime from what I saw at the outset was, which, I mean, granted isn't great, but would have been perpetuating the status quo. Like, here he's got this 88-year-old cardinal who has this history, and why hasn't he already been dealt with by the two previous popes who promoted him? And so that fell apart. I think the Amazon Synod, though, they still kind of had that momentum going on. And if you remember that, like, lay leaders roundtable they had, and it was Taylor Marshall, Michael Voris, Michael Matt, I think Dave Mattei was there. It was, I guess, TFP sponsored this event. John Henry Weston. It was like this summit of like all the reactionary leaders of the English-speaking and Italian-speaking world that are sitting there, basically trashing the Pope on the eve of the Amazon Synod.
Plus, I mean, given the subject matter of the Amazon Synod, they were able to, they developed the Pachamama talking point. They were able to.
Yeah, I think that was like the next day.
The world leader Bolsonaro is basically explicitly on the rad trad anti-Francis wing of the church. I do think in some ways it was kind of a high water mark.
Oh yeah, and I think having TFP, because I mean, I guess they're a bunch of Brazilian noblemen, having them behind it was big, in terms of money, and so that happened, right? And I guess the peak moment was the splash in the Tiber, but after that, it kind of all fell. I mean, in a lot of ways, there were a lot of falling outs. I mean, Taylor Marshall fell out with everybody. Tim Gordon and Voris and Patrick Coffin. It just seemed that there were these little splits, and people were losing confidence in Viganò because he was getting more and more crazy as 2020 wore on. And I think the fact that any chance that they had of affecting Francis, of really undoing his papacy. I mean, I think they've slowed him down. I think they've made him. I think he's less effective in a lot of ways than he would have been had these relentless attacks not taken place. But but they didn't stop him. He's still Pope. He's going to be Pope as long as he wants to be Pope at this point. And they were ineffective. So what do they turn to now? They've got to turn to end times or apocalyptic theories, or, I mean, basically they're faced with either they're wrong, which they're never going to admit, or there's something just beyond their imagination going on. It's a conspiracy. It's the new world order. It's the end of the world. I mean, I wrote a line once in one of these articles that was like, it was a documentary about the Great Reset. I think they called it The Greatest Reset, with starring Tim Gordon and some of these other people. And I'm like, this is a movie about people who think they're living in a movie. It's this big adventure. You know, you watch some of these videos about the 3 days of darkness, you know, these Catholic speakers go around, and it's fantastical.
Well, I noticed, like you seem to be moving towards here, which is the idea that, you know, the traditionalist sort of surge that happened around 2018, 2019, it has fizzled out in a lot of ways, like, especially like, you know, online, which is where a lot of this stuff happened. And I don't mean to say that because it was online, it was not influential. I think it was hugely influential because it was online. But you had so many of these sort of rad trads, right? Like all of a sudden in 2018, especially, becoming very vocal. And then you had some like slightly more mainstream people like, well, Taylor Marshall even, right? He was Patrick Coffin. These guys were at one point sort of semi-mainstream Catholicism, or conservative Catholicism. And they gravitated towards it. There was a lot of attention. And even you started to see some of this attitude seeping into, you know, some fairly major Catholic publications. And it was this idea, and you had the letter that was sent, I forget exactly who the signatories were, but about, you know, the heresies of Pope Francis and all that stuff.
Aidan Nichols was the biggest name on
Aidan
there.
Nichols, and
John Hunwick, who I noticed because I'm friends with someone who at one time thought very highly of him. I don't know if he still does. I hope not.
Yeah. So there was that, you know, that letter, and then after around, you know, once 2020 starts and the pandemic and everything, there seemed to be a different take from some people on the right, the Catholic right. I think they gravitated towards one of two things, which is either, well, a lot of them had just kind of decided to forget about Viganò because, you know, a lot of them were trying to put Viganò behind them now. Some of them gravitated towards what I would call the mainstream Catholic conservative position, which is basically take little bits and pieces of Pope Francis and use it to justify whatever you're trying to do, which makes it seem like nothing has changed through the Francis papacy. And I saw that like in, you know, just sort of the mainstream sort of EWTN type attitude, mainstream American conservative Catholic attitude. And then also the integralist movement, which gained a lot of momentum. People like, you know, Adrian Vermeule and people like Sohrab Ahmari, who are not antagonistic towards Pope Francis. I mean, I personally think they don't listen to Pope Francis. They don't actually understand what he's about. But integralism can only function if the Pope is the greatest authority figure on earth, right? And so they can't. They're not into this idea of accusing the Pope of heresy or trying to get him to resign or anything like that. So they need Pope Francis to be Pope Francis. So I think a lot of them have gravitated towards one of those two positions. I think the rad trad thing, it's fizzling out. There's still, you know, the hardcore people like the LifeSite News, and they've gone full in. They're, you know, all in, and I mean, they've paid the price for it in many ways. They went all in on the anti-COVID stuff. All these people, they all ended up getting kicked off of you know, a lot of the social media platforms, and now they're sort of marginalized. But I think the smarter sort of right-wing Catholics who are not comfortable with the Francis papacy have found a way to reconcile themselves to it in one of those two ways that I described: the sort of EWTN method or the integralist method.
You know, it's funny, the integralist method, I think today, you know, 3 summers ago, there was a letter by an archbishop that was like a nuclear bomb going off in the church, the Viganò letter. I don't know what the impact of that letter this morning is going to be. The letter from Pope Francis to Father James Martin, because a lot of these, I don't even want to call them integralists, because it's not just integralists. It's also, a lot of, well, some of the Dominicans, I guess, are integralists, but a lot of sort of the mainstream conservative Catholic outlets, like not Penton, but some of the other Register writers, or The Pillar, or Our Sunday Visitor, have
some of the British ones, like the Tablet, maybe.
Not the Herald, I guess. The Tablet,
yes, that's the one. The Tablet's something else. Yeah.
But they've been sort of co-opting Francis. They've sort of been saying, "Hey, the CDF put out this thing against blessing same-sex couples. How come you aren't cheering about that? Or how come they're following exactly what Ladaria is saying, and you're criticizing them, but this is what he said." And it's like, and it's just amazing to see them like flip the narrative in their favor. But then to have Pope Francis write a letter and to have it published where he's praising Father Jim Martin and his ministry.
Praising him specifically for his ministry.
For his ministry, praising the people that he's ministering to, telling him to keep on going. Going back to 2 years ago almost, there was the story of these bishops who, these anonymous bishops who told CNA reporters that Pope Francis had been bad-mouthing Father Martin during their ad limina meeting. And I heard on relatively good authority that entire story was bunk. Like, it was just, I know, Nathan, you wrote about it, Dan and Mary wrote about it, I wrote about it. Like, it was terrible journalism. Bishops came forward. There were only 15 or so bishops that could have given this anonymous information, and 2 of them came forward and put their names behind it, saying this story is not true. Another one of the bishops that was there was Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver, and he gave a statement that didn't confirm or deny anything in CNA. So I tried to reach out to him for my story. Like, can you clarify? Were you one of the anonymous bishops? Does this statement mean that you endorse a point of view? Like, his statement was just sort of generic, like different people can have different impressions of what happened. But it's, they've been pushing this, like, where Peter is doesn't really support the Pope. Where Peter is hasn't been accurately interpreting him. Where are you guys coming from? Where, you guys just don't get it. You aren't supporting, the whole Cardinal Sarah thing. Like, if you don't act like Cardinal Sarah was Pope Francis's #1 super fan, everyone who hates Pope Francis, gets furious at you. I mean, he's people who don't, he's the Pope Francis fan for people who don't like Pope Francis, is what I thought.
I've watched this, this happen. There was that same, I think it was the same ad limina visit where the bishop said that, Pope Francis had agreed with this, their preeminent priority doctrine when it comes to abortion. And of course, I'm not saying that Pope Francis thinks that abortion is not a serious issue. He absolutely does. He said it over and over again.
He's mentioned it in, I believe, every single encyclical and apostolic extortation.
Yes.
Which I'm pretty sure can't be said of any of his predecessors.
Well, and one thing
also
though, the preeminent and a preeminent.
Yes,
and I think the actual news story said a preeminent, like the CNA story or whoever publicized it. But then bishops and so forth would repeat the story by saying Pope Francis said it's the preeminent issue.
Yeah, and what it sounded like to me was that they brought up this idea that we've made abortion the preeminent priority officially, and he said something like, "Well, of course, the right to life is a priority, because without the right to life, you don't have any of the other rights. Now, this is not unique to the abortion issue. This is just a standard idea within human rights, right? Like the right to life is important, and that's the right to life of anyone, right? Like, and that includes when you're talking about things like war, when you're talking about things like genocide, when you're talking about things like anything that would sort of make it difficult for people to live and survive, right? Of course, you need that. Everyone has that basic right to life. So I think Pope Francis, in the way he's always presented the abortion issue, whenever I've come across it, and I've come across it often in his writings, it's placed within a larger context of all the other things we need to think about when we're thinking about the right to life and human rights in general. So it's, you can call it the seamless garment. I don't like to now, because that has such a negative connotation, but it's this idea that, abortion is one piece of a larger puzzle of the things that are wrong with the world that we need to work to fix. But yeah, they interpreted it as he agreed with their preeminent priority doctrine. And I saw the same thing happen with, this whole Eucharistic coherence narrative, where they use the Aparecida document, which Pope Francis had a big role in writing, and they took this one paragraph about that saying that politicians who support abortion, who support euthanasia, should not receive the Eucharist. They took that one thing out of this, revolutionary document that's huge and influential, and used that to support their idea that their push to deny communion to pro-choice American politicians, something that just seemed very, very out of character with the way that Pope Francis has been engaging with politicians, has been engaging with global leaders and movements, and trying to establish a sort of common ground before getting to those difficult differences. So again, it's taking little bits and pieces and then constructing a Pope Francis who's very, very different from the one that I think, if you actually read his stuff, if you actually read Fratelli Tutti or Let Us Dream, or any of his earlier, like Laudato Si and all these encyclicals, you get a deeper understanding of where Pope Francis is going, what his priorities are, and you can tell right away this is out of line with the way Pope Francis thinks.
Yeah, I think we're like way over time, but there was a lot of technical difficulty.
Yeah.
We'll clean up the audio podcast version. A couple of things. If you if you want us to have better technical stuff, please donate to our Patreon. Secondly, I don't know if you guys have time, because we've run a little bit late, but we were talking about maybe doing a little Patreon bonus after the show.
Sure.
I can stay around for a bit, yeah.
Okay, 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to talk about the Father Martin letter from this morning. About
to get deeper into it.
Yeah, we gave you a little taste of that. And then finally, keep an eye out for Gareth's video. Gareth, I apologize. I feel terrible. You're great. Your video was awesome. I'm going to put it up on YouTube because I think it deserves to be seen, and I'm sorry that it didn't work. And I bet you it would work now if I did it, but I'm not going to no more technical mess ups. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the recording, play the little theme music, and then David, Nathan, and I are going to spend another 10 or 15 minutes recording. I'll upload the video and then post the embedded on Patreon. For those of you who are Patreon supporters, you can watch that. So that'll be up, I think, later tonight. Anyway, and if any of you guys have any closing remarks, save them for the patrons. Thank you very much. This is A Critical Catholic. That's David Lafferty. That's Nathan Tarowski. I'm Mike Lewis. And here is our goodbye song.